You're listening to the Naked World Podcast with J Cats and Miss Death. This show is presented by the Mu Mesons Archives and produced by Jack Ginger. The Mu Mesons Archives is an ever-expanding countercultural avalanche of lost media, wild ephemera, and obsessive perspectives covering all forms of artistic and philosophical expression. Please stay up to date with J Cats and Miss Death by following us on our social media pages. Our Instagram handle is @MuMesons, MuMesons. For Facebook and YouTube, just search the Mu Mesons Archives. For $13 a month, you can access exclusive content and rare material available nowhere else on the web. Subscribe at patreon.com/Mu Mesons. The Mu Mesons Archives is a warehouse located in Annandale, Sydney, housing fringe and countercultural artifacts including film, music, and literature. To assist with its maintenance and upkeep, please donate and support the Mu Mesons Archives. PayPal.me/Mu Mesons. If you wish to contact the archives, please find us at mumesonsarchives.com for bookings, inquiries, and collaborations. Don't forget to subscribe. Now to your hosts, J Cats and Miss Death.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name's J Cats and welcome to the Naked World Podcast, Miss Death.
Yes.
Still knitting.
Still knitting, yeah.
Yeah, we've had a moment, haven't we? We've had an alternator die.
Oh, look, everything's happening at once.
It
That's
really
always
is.
the way.
But tonight we're going to have a little private screening of
Vegas in Space.
Vegas in Space.
Yeah, we are.
Doris Fish celebrating the life of one of Sydney's most notorious drag queens.
Yep.
Now, talking about notorious drag queens, I think we'll throw to our exceptional guest, someone who goes right back in our timeline virtually to our birth, one of the greatest performers, raconteurs, promoters I'm ever to meet, a fellow soul spirit in the world of collecting, a absolute madman, someone who has toured some of the greatest acts to Australia's and virtually destroyed their careers.
And here we go.
And here goes Anton. From intense touring, one of our greatest friends, one of our truest soulmates. We should have had you on at the beginning of the Naked World podcast. Jeffrey Halls, Dr El Suavo, so many other names you've gone under. Thank you so much for being part of the Naked World.
Oh my God, this cat.
Well, thank you, Jay and Miss Death. What an introduction. The introduction is a segue, a thumbs down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the segue, no, but the introduction was fantastic. How are both of you?
We're good.
It's so good to see you.
And it's been too long since we've been in person in a way.
You know? Well, yeah, it has been a while.
Yeah. Now, you are one of the most... We want to go right back on your timeline, but to begin with, I think people who mightn't know much, because a lot of your career has been behind the scenes or in a mask.
Yeah,
and for good reason. But I'm really chirpy this morning. But we adore you, and you have been one of the most generous souls that have brought some of the most interesting connections into our life.
Yes.
I think we first met you through Intense Touring, your company.
Okay.
And tell us about some of the artists, the incredible groundbreaking acts that you've brought to this country.
Well, thank you very much, and the same in return with you guys, because you guys have been very influential in my on my path and my taste and my flavors as well. Well, with Intense Touring, basically that sort of started in the punk days. Probably the first sort of shows I booked were about 1988, and they were sort of some Sydney punk bands, sort of hardcore bands, crossover bands like Death Mission, Massive Appendage. And they were at little venues like the Sydney Yougle Soccer Club up there in Haymarket, which is sadly not there anymore. Little venues like that. And then that basically just came out from helping bands. You know, back in the day, you'd help a band, you see a band, you know, with a quad box or a drum kit outside the venue. You pick it up and you help it. And that's how we started friendships. We're all, at that stage, we're all like lost little sheep, sort of looking for a herd, and the punk scene and the noise scene and the underground scene in the 80s was great for that. So that was sort of my initial sort of started booking some shows, just roadieing with bands. Then I got asked to go up to Queensland with Psychotic Turnbuckles. You know, about 1987, I think I went down to Melbourne with Mass Appeal when I was supporting DRI. So it came from being a fan just wanting to help, and then it just sort of snowballed from there. And then in 1990, I decided to move to Adelaide. And a lot of people would go, why the hell would you move to Adelaide? Well, first reason was usually it takes a woman for a guy to do something stupid like that. Okay,
it's always
so
about
number
the
one,
pussy.
yeah, number one, it was a woman.
And speaking
Number
about
two-
pussies, Anton's here to say hello to
Is that Anton?
Yes, it is.
you. Yeah.
I haven't seen Anton for so long. Hello, Anton.
Hi there,
Minty,
Jeff.
Cook, Drew, and Darren send their love, Anton.
Beautiful. Of course, you're a big cat person as well. But let's get
Oh, I
back to
love-
the pussy in Adelaide.
Yeah. Well, see, the other thing that intrigued me about Adelaide was that there was a weird underbelly to it. You know, like if
Always.
oh,
Adelaide
Yeah.
is astounding, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, in terms of some of the most innovative music and
And
artists
people that we've met
we've
are all
ever
from
met
Adelaide.
have all come from Adelaide. And
Yeah.
let's not underestimate the power of Grong Grong.
no.
They're not from Adelaide,
Well,
are they?
like, you know, King Snake Roost and people like that. Or, you know,
Yeah.
Stu Spasm did his time in Adelaide. You know, amazing place. And you know, if someone gets murdered in Adelaide, you know, there's going to be a little bit of a twist to it. It's just
Yeah,
not going to be a
absolutely.
standard murder. You know, it's going to be.
They're going to put in a barrel of acid. Yeah. Snowtown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I actually moved to Adelaide was when Von Eyman was actually on trial for the family murders.
Right.
And that was quite interesting. And a lot of stuff was actually coming out about that. And I knew about it in Sydney, you know, that stuff intrigues me. So I was like, whoa, you know, that was bang into Adelaide, and that was the introduction sort of thing.
Yeah.
And don't drink the tap. Okay.
Right.
And then, so the first gig I go to in Adelaide with a couple of friends was horrible, terrible. And I'm like, oh, is this what I've got to look forward to for the rest of my life? Someone who'd like to see live music. And then a friend of mine, it gets even better. The second show I went to, the legendary Toe, Mr. Chris Cashel, also known as Raw Sets and part of the Dr. El Suavo and Freaks of Nature music ensemble. He goes, Jeff, don't worry. I'll take you to the best venue in Adelaide next Sunday. We're going to go see Yog Sothoth, Tardis Retardus, and Luminous Green Snow at the Centralia Hotel. And I'm like, all right, I'm looking forward to this. Excited all week. We get to a venue. Well, it's a pub, no stage, little vocal PA, and three of the worst bands I've ever seen in my life. But we got really drunk. But hey, that's Adelaide. So I think it was even the Monday, the day after, or the Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, I was like, this ain't going to work. So I ended up ringing Dave Thomas, rest in peace, the late Dave Thomas, the band.
How long were you there for? How long were you there for by this stage?
Oh, not even a month.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd really given it a chance. I was young, you know, like now I'd give it, you know, a couple of years, but
Yeah.
there was nothing happening and no one was coming through Adelaide at that time. Very rare, only bigger sort of bands. So I got on the phone, I rang Dave Thomas, who unfortunately passed away from last year, from Geelong band Board, who were one of my favourite sort of Detroit garage rock bands from the 80s. Beautiful guy. I'm like, would you guys be interested in coming over? Yeah, first tour I did. Then I got on to the guys from Mass Appeal, because they were close friends of mine. It's like, you know, I know people in Adelaide want to come and see Mass Appeal. So I sort of worked it out that we could do, you know, $500 a show. And with a surf area down in Port Noarlunga, we were able to get the bands into two areas because you could only really do one show in Adelaide. And, you know, it's a big country town. So after those two tours, it pretty much just snowballed. I started getting phone calls from Wally Meany, Mark that was working at Premier Artists and people like that with bands. So it almost became like there was an act in Adelaide every weekend for a couple of years. So I'd have to alternate from doing, you know, the hard-ons to Kim Salmon and Surrealists, but then I might do some indie pop bands like the Fauves or, you know, the Glory Box or Ripe, something. You can't do the same genre every weekend in Adelaide. I had to learn to adapt. It wasn't like Sydney where there was gigs almost every night back in the late 80s, you know. And then that eventually sort of rollballed into doing some international stuff as a local agent in in Adelaide. So stuff like the Rollins Band, I was the representative for. I worked on the Nirvana show in Adelaide, and various things like that. Who else? Buffalo Tom, a few more. Then I had the relationship I'd broken up, after a couple of years, and I was like, okay, maybe it's time to go back to Sydney. So I decided to move back to Sydney in '93, and that was when I'd done my first full sort of East Coast international tour, and that was with a band called from Texas called Sugar Shack. So I put together a package which was Sugar Shack, board. Dave Thomas once again stepped up the plate, goes, use my van, the band can use the equipment. We just get a minivan to carry the rest of the people. And away we go. And we also had Iron Sheiks on that show from Adelaide. So it was ironic because that tour started in Adelaide and finished in Sydney. And I had all my stuff sent up from Adelaide to Sydney. So I left Adelaide and stayed in Sydney. And we had an extra special yeah, we had a special guest on that tour because I had 2 Queensland tree frogs at that time. So we carried the tank with the tree frogs along on the tour with us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's incredible.
And the tree frogs were called Bill and Ted. That was pretty funny. And then I did a year in Sydney, but I saw what was going on in Sydney in the early 90s. There was only a few venues going on, and the sort of the weirder, noisier stuff I was getting interested in because I felt the punk hardcore scene had become stale in the 90s. It become generic. Every band wanted to sound like Bad Religion or with the metalcore thing. I'd always had a fascination for noise and experimental music. Especially bands like later SBK. I wasn't, I'm not quite old enough to see the early version, which I would have loved, but even Severed Heads, No, all those bands I used to love when they'd come to Sydney. So I was listening to different types of music, and that's when I started looking. Okay, no one's addressing some of this sort of music in Australia at the moment. So through some connections I'd already made overseas, I'd done the Sugar Shack tour, so that was sort of garage rock sort of thing, and then Dead Moon came along, and that to me personally is probably the most amazing thing that I've been a part of, because people who know about Dead Moon and Fred and Tootie and their story and Andrew, it's quite an amazing journey. And I became a 4th member of that band for 3 tours, and I would stay with those guys over in Portland when I'd go over to America and do some of my own shows and things like that. So I became part of the family, and it's something that I really cherish to this day. And unfortunately, Andrew and Fred aren't with us anymore, but that's what time does to us in rock and roll, but they'll live on forever. And then, a couple of things. And that also, after that, was when I first started to dip my toe into Japanese, touring some Japanese music. And that was Zenny Gaber. And they were amazing. Like 2 guitars and drummer who were able to just get on stage, and within 10 minutes of any equipment they had this amazing sound. And that really fueled that really got me inspired, because that was probably the inclination leading up to the big one, which was Mr. Bungle in 1996. And the weird thing was, with regards to Mr. Bungle, was that I was trying to bring over Godflesh for a number of years in the early 90s. And their American manager, Kristen Yee, also managed Mr. Bungle. And she offered me Mr. Bungle, but I said, no, I'm not interested. I want Godflesh. Because to be honest with you, I didn't rate their demo tape that came out in the 80s. And the album that Zorn produced, the Mr. Bungle one with Travolta and all that on it, I wasn't a huge fan of. I thought it was a little bit cheesy. Mm-hmm. But then, lo and behold, Disco Volante came out. And I was starting to distribute a label because I was doing Black Hole Records at the same time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was doing bands like Damage, and I'd done Zenny Gaver. I imported and distributed the Tetsuo soundtrack. And so that stuff was there. And I had a great contact in Japan called Shoei, who ran Japan Overseas, which was a label that imported my releases into Japan. We had a contra deal. She faxes me one day and says, I've been talking to Danny from Mr. Bungle, and they want to come to Japan and Australia on their new album, Disco Volante. But I cannot make Japan happen. here is Danny's telephone number. And that was the way it started.
Right.
And also, ironically, at this same time, Simone Turkington, who you've had on this show, with her friend Agatha, had put together a petition to get Mr. Bungle to tour Australia.
Yes.
Unbeknownst to us. Yeah. So my partner at that time, Julie, somehow had gotten on to these girls and found this petition. I get this fax from my Japanese contact regarding the tour and a contact from Danny. And it just all fell into place. And Disco Volante comes out. And I get a copy from Polydor and have a listen to it and go, oh my God, this is one of the most amazing records I've ever heard in my life. I have to do this. And it was a huge undertaking. It was scary. But wow, what can I say? It was funny because I tried to keep it as cheap as possible. We did shows for $25. $25 with an 8-piece band on stage from overseas, and the 70% of the equipment was brought over from America. It was an expensive tour to do, but it was a statement that we all agreed on that, you know, there were bands during that time, like say No Doubt, were charging $50 and $60 a ticket, and we made a conscious decision to go, no, we don't need to do that. We'll provide a bigger show at half the price, and everyone walked away happy. Including the band. They made good money, and you know, we did well out of it. And I think just, you know, the fans appreciated us doing that. And you know, what can I say about that tour? It was, to me, it was still, I think, a very groundbreaking tour for this country. You know,
I think it's a groundbreaking tour for everyone that saw it, everyone that was part of it, and it has changed lives. And half that band ended up migrating to this country because of that tour.
Because of pussy.
Exactly. We have Bear McKinnon down here in Victoria, and Danny Heifetz is up there. But guess what?
Right.
He's moving down to Victoria as well. So it looks like I might have to dye my hair, cut my hair, and do a goatee. And we can do the Mr. Bungle tribute band. I can do a Patton.
Of course you can.
Of course you can. He'll be so happy to hear that. You know what is phenomenal, Jeff, is just how incredibly neglected your history as a promoter is in terms of documentation and acknowledgement. How risky it must have been for you and Julie as this tiny little independent with not a huge bankroll behind you, and how generous that you and her were with making sure that other musicians and performers got to be part of your shows. That breaks me up emotionally every time I think about it.
Well, it was the sort of thing, and I look back in hindsight, and I was offered tours that, you know, I could have bought a house with. I was offered Green Day. You know, I could have done Green Day when that first exploded, and a few other things like that. But I sort of, with me, and it was with a label, it was my lifestyle. It wasn't a business. And it had to give something to me, which if I was going to work on something in 3 to 4 months, I want to be listening to that band for 3 or 4 months. If I can't, you know, that's, and so it was never that thing of trying to aim bigger, or it was sort of acts that would come along, or I'd discover, or people I knew here or overseas would put me onto and say, these guys are cool to work with, or, you know, or I could get something personally out of it as well. And, you know, probably 30% or 40% of tours I did lost money. But, you know, I'm very, you know, okay, you're bummed out at the end of it, but then, you know, you reflect back on it and go, wow, you know, the experiences. And I've made some great friendships, and I've been able to stay with these people and share things with them overseas as well. So it's brought it, I always saw it more than just a business. It was a, you know, like a family, a co-op, or something like that. We're all on the train.
I mean, you must be, you know, in relation to the rest of promotion companies, and, you know, maybe we could throw Dave Batty in there, but there must be very few other people that ever operated on the level that,
on that
you
grassroots
did,
level, yes,
and brought so much innovation and changed this country. People need to realise that legacy, that you altered everyone that came in contact with those acts.
Well, see, what there are they're promoters like that, but they're stuck in a genre. Like you'll have your under little grassroots, bringing out hardcore bands or some metal bands or something like that. But that's, to me, if that's what they want to do and that's what they're into, that's fine, that sort of thing. But part of me with punk, and I still feel like a lot of me is punk, because it's progression. I've always wanted to stay, a little bit left of the center, or I don't know, a couple of steps ahead or behind, or whatever terminology you want to use. Mm-hmm. So it was like, I love my punk and hardcore that I love from when I was young, but I saw it go generic. And that's why I went in other directions. It was like, no, I need more. I'm craving more. My juices want more, Mm-hmm. So that, and the Bungle thing was great, and Zenny Gaver was great from that, because in that, through some other stuff like Faxed Head, which was an offshoot of Mr. Secret Chiefs, which was an offshoot of Mr. Bungle. Mm-hmm. Another, like the Secret Chiefs tour, my God. Personally, I preferred Secret Chiefs to Mr. Bungle. That's my personal taste, because there's a film sort of sound vibe in there. You know what I mean? Yeah. And, and also out of the Mr. Bungle tour, I got a raise is that I met probably my greatest collaboration partner, and that's Greg Turkington, mm-hmm. who tour managed Mr. Bungle on that Disco Volante tour, and probably within a year he was living with me in Melbourne for a period of time, because he's got a dual citizenship, being born in Alice Springs. Yeah. But so that was something I really got out of it. So the Faxed Head tour, Greg's McPatrick in a wheelchair and stuff like that. And before you know it, they're all like, no, I want you singing on this song, and sing this song. And they've pulled me into the band. Yeah. So it's like, okay. So I had to come up with a character and everything like that. So, fantastic offshoots and friendships that still continue today with all those guys. I love them a lot. And say with Zenny Gaver, a good offshoot was the KK Noel solo shows that we used to do. He was amazing. And then I was lucky enough in 1999, when Faith No More were touring Australia, that Patton went, let's do 3 side shows in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. And that was when Masami Akita, Merzbow, first came to Australia. And that was at the invitation of Mike Patton. We made it happen. And then, Melbourne, we had KK Noel opening for those guys. It was one of the most amazing nights of improvising experimental music in front of 700 people I've ever seen in my life. Yeah.
I mean, it's just breathtaking. At that stage when you were introduced to Bungle and you're about to tour them, had Patton been offered the job as the frontman at Faith No More? Had that occurred?
Yeah. No, he was in Faith No More from 1988, I think it was, 88 or 89. Yeah.
So it was very close. So the demo tape would have come before Faith No More of Bungle. I'm trying to think, because he was more of an experimental, marginalised artist, and then all of a sudden, bang, people realised the depth of his vocal range and what he could offer, and went, my God, let's shove him in this band.
Yeah, and part of the arrangement was with the signing of that deal that they signed Mr. Bungle. Since Mr. Bungle, this album comes out on Warner Brothers on a major label, they didn't have to go through the independent record route, bang, that air straight away, getting that exposure. And, God, the Faith No More tag, the Patton tag, that sells. And it should. He's an amazing talent. He, I rate him very high. And, can be prickly to deal with, but it's fun.
Well, we can all be prickly at times, and I think that's. I mean, especially come on. When you're touring people, you're in their wake 24/7, and there's stress, there's excitement, there's frustration, there's equipment failures, and I think to end up with the truth of the pudding is your extraordinary relationship with America's #1 funny man, Greg Turkington, Neil Hamburger. That relationship is like superheated steel. And that's because people saw that element in you, that you were doing things that were based on your passion, not necessarily the dollar. And it wasn't easy for you ever financially to do what you do. Well, you actually went beyond what you'd imagine was possible for a smaller promotion company.
Yeah. Well, Greg, as I said, like Greg's amazing because in 2000 I had a very bad car accident. Eddie Fury from the Fireballs, the drummer, and me. I used to have a beautiful '69 Valiant VF Coupe Burgundy, big hot rod car. Eddie and me were out one night, and unfortunately I rode it off and almost killed the pair. And I was in hospital for a couple of weeks, and it was a very dark period of my life. And when I was a kid, I used to perform magic. My father's a magician.
Yeah, let's go back to the beginning now.
And you know what? Excuse me, my mother's in palliative care and my brother's just come to the door. So Asper's going to keep carrying on. That's the way we do this.
Yep.
And I'm just going to have a little word with him.
And just check
right.
Anton too. Yep. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the beginning because...
No. Keep going with that story.
The beginning of...
That's an amazing story.
The magic and stuff.
It goes in a weird circle this way because it's actually... We've sort of got to 2000, okay? And we have to go back now to when I was like 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
And so my father was a magician and was president of the Genie's Magical Society up there in Sydney for like 30, 35 years. And he used to work under the name The Great Fazzini. He wasn't that great. He should have been the Fazzini, but Great Fazzini. And so as a young child, I got sort of caught up in magic and doing magic. And it was amazing being around the older magicians as a young child.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have Jimmy Guinness, who was like a little person magician. He was my favorite. But also what they used to do, these bums, the older magicians, they go out and get drunk, come home at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like, wake up young Jeffrey to perform for us.
Oh, God.
So I'd get up half asleep in front of drunk magicians and have to perform a couple.
Is that where you got your style from?
Yeah. Well, a big inspiration for me is Tommy Cooper from my old fleet. And there was an Australian magician, you can YouTube him, a guy called Bill Killip. And he was pretty damn rough. His suits were always stained and creased. His top dentures were always slipping out.
Wow.
And I'd even seen him produce a dove on stage which just fell to the floor and it was dead.
Oh,
and he was amazing. He had the biggest hat in the Yellow Pages, so he used to get all the children's parties, all the functions and everything.
Right.
He was on Townsend's Wonderworld once and they showed his house. It looked like an episode of Hoarders.
Buried
and he's
alive.
like doing it. It was... So he was a hero of mine.
Of course.
So that's Bill Killip on YouTube, Killip. But so did that for a few years. But then when I got into the punk rock when I was 14, sort of, young teenager listening and seeing that sort of style of thing, I thought it was uncool. So I gave it away for years. Then I wasn't doing it for years up until the car accident. After the car accident, I started playing with cards again and just a few things as a therapy thing.
Right.
And started enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
And around that time, well, a little bit later in 2000, Greg rings up and it's like, okay, it's time for a Neil Hamburger tour. And he wanted to bring over a duo from Canada called Canned Ham.
Oh, yes.
Who we all found
I remember Canned Ham. Such an amazing... They were... They just... we put them on at the Annandale one Sunday afternoon and they totally freaked everybody out there. Big Ham and Little Ham. And there was one act that they did that, Big Ham, it was Robert and Steve,
Robert was Little Ham and Steve. Yeah, I'm still in contact
Big Ham.
with the pair.
And they were, one was like this huge mountain of a guy and the other one was like the really, really thin, small guy. So it was Big Ham and Little Ham. And Steve would get Robert to sit on his leg, on his knee, and make him like a marionette, like a ventriloquist dummy. And when they did that act, the bar staff at the Annandale absolutely freaked out. It's like, what is wrong with you people? This is hilarious. And I actually saw
mind you,
that was,
they're pretty much naked and sweaty and just wearing like tight little tiger print briefs.
yes.
Shorts.
Yeah. I know. That's probably what freaked him out more than anything. It was so inappropriate, but so appropriate. But I actually saw people in the audience that were actually our friends that I thought had great senses of humour who were absolutely freaked out by it and offended.
Yeah.
And it just polarised people so badly. You either loved them or you hated them. There was no middle ground with this band, which is really bizarre.
It was. I found that quite daunting. And that reminds me, I think when we did the Vic on the Park show, and that was crazy that night. There were bullets. Someone had brought bullets to the show. There were bullets on the floor and the stage everywhere. People just rolling around messed up. But then they did that song, You Need a Hug, where they go around the audience.
Where they go around and hug people? Oh.
Yeah, it's sweaty and grotty as anything. And I just remember little Hamm Robert, or as you nicknamed him, I think, Stumbelina.
Oh, yes.
And he's actually been the booze for 8 years, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, well, he actually came because they stayed with us, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
we all stayed.
Yeah, you all stayed with us. And we've had some people through this place, I tell you. I've totally forgotten that they actually stayed with us because when he went out one night, and we were freaked because he went out into the city, and he came back and he was like so drunk. He was smashed and he was stumbling around everywhere. And he was telling us that he met this amazing woman and blah, 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 blah. And it turned out to be a guy. It was a drag queen. He ended up in Oxford Street.
It's, like in Melbourne, right? In Melbourne, before the tour actually started, he had to go to the doctor because he had some STD and he met a girl there.
Of course. Well, yeah, of course he did. He was like a chick magnet, that guy. Anyway, but if you look at him, he's just a nerdy-looking, weedy little guy. But he just pulls that pussy, I tell you. Anyway, they were just an amazing act.
Yeah, but that night on the Vic on the Park, I remember him hugging Blackie, and I actually went and saw Blackie from the Hard-Ons last night to acoustic, and I love him, but the look on Blackie's face while he was hugging him, like, I go get Robert and remove. I thought he was going to kill the poor guy.
Yeah. I mean, they were just such an innocent pair, such lovely Canadian people, big Hamm.
They are beautiful. I've done shows with them here. I've done a couple of shows with them in America and in Vancouver as well. And I'm still good friends with Steve. He does a thing now called Theremin Man, which is quite fantastic that you can find on Facebook and everyone. So that's Theremin, as in the woo.
Yeah.
And Robert's still, he's in LA now and doing, a lot of stuff there. They're very creative people, though.
So they're not doing Canned Hamm anymore together?
No.
Okay. Yeah. That's all right. Got it.
Like that, the show we did in Seattle in 2003 together, Robert was very drunk even before they actually started, and there was a bit of a dark period on stage, and it was like, okay, I can see that these are going to be the last shows for a while, and they had to do that to save their friendship.
Yeah,
and they're still friends, but it was time to move on.
Okay. Yep.
It wasn't an act that had a 30-year lifespan, and it's not like the Wiggles. It should be.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah.
So
how did they go over in Canada? Was it the same? People either loved them or hated them?
No. Look, America and Canada is completely different. Is so more up for it and acceptive than Australia. Yeah. Like that was when so I've got to go back a little bit. Sorry, with regards to that tour with Neil Hamburger and Canned Hamm, Greg said to me, because he knew I'd been playing with Magic, and then he's like, "I want you to open on that tour." And I said, "Look, I haven't been on stage since, I sang in a couple of little hardcore bands, but never did really anything in the 80s, and really hadn't been on stage doing Magic since I was 12."
Right.
He pushed me, and that was when I decided to, the first thing I didn't want to do was do it as myself on stage, because it looks like, okay, people know I work with Greg. They know it's my tour, and I'm just throwing myself on to make more money in front of my face.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to create a character to do this.
Sure.
And the character I created was Dr. El Suavo.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to wear a lucha libre mask, which I love Mexican wrestling. I've always loved my fezzes, and a tuxedo. I was born in a tuxedo.
Love a fez.
Yeah. So, and that first tour, I wasn't even talking. It was basically I would do a DJ set and do a few magic tricks in between the DJing. That's how it started.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for the first couple of years. And I went to America for the first time in 2003 to tour. Right. And Greg said to me, he's like, you really need to start talking to the audience, because even just mentioning you from Melbourne, Australia.
I bet he regrets that now, hey?
Everyone goes, bloody Greg. Yeah. That's you got Greg Turkington. So because I had all my backing set, I had film trailers mixed in with some music, and it was all sort of choreographed a bit.
Yeah.
But I did find, before I'd hit that mini disc player on that tour, I'd just say, good evening, Sam, wherever I was, Shittsville, Arizona. I'm Dr. El Suavo, Australia's greatest magician, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Right. And the crowd would go off. And it was just like, okay. And this is the difference that I found in America and Australia, is that the audiences are up for fun. They're up for a good night, and it's pretty much been like that every show I've done over there. So when I came back after 2003, I decided I had to work on the act a little bit more, and that's when I decided, okay, it's time to talk. But there was one show that I did as that first set that I was doing in America when I got back to Australia. This is a bit of an interesting little story. So I was back for probably a week, and I get a phone call from a dear old friend, Neil Webb, and he's asked me if I would like to perform at the Palais Theatre in Melbourne.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, the Palais. The history of the Palais Theatre, of course I want it. Mm-hmm. But then I go, okay, yeah, of course I want to perform. Who am I supporting? And he goes, have you heard from Steve-O from Jackass? And I'm like, oh, God. Steve-O, Jackass crew. All right. Yeah. I said, look, it's the Palais. I've got to do it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So decide to do the show. Sold out Palais Theatre on a Wednesday night during school holidays. Wow. Remember that.
Yeah.
Okay. So prepared to do the show. The curtains there. Sold out Palais. So that's from 2,000 people, close to that. The curtains open. I haven't even started the mini disc play yet. I'm just standing there in all Dr. El Suavo's glory, and the first thing I hear he yelled out is, get off the fucking stage, you faggot cunt, before we kill you. And I hadn't done anything. Hadn't said anything. And I just point to the guy on the curtain. The curtain's closed again.
Oh, wow.
And I microphone that's like, okay, this is Steve-O's MC for the tour. Dr. El Suavo is actually Steve-O's personal choice for opening tonight. So come on, kids, give him a break, Also, you can thank Dr. El Suavo for being allowed out a little bit later tonight, so your parents will pick you up half an hour later, right? Tonight. Curtains open again, and it's like, okay, this is going to be the most confrontational show I've ever done.
Right.
And it was a bit scary, yeah. But we got there to the end, and towards the end, I was just like, what the hell? I was doing a straitjacket escape, and I'm like, the music was running out, and I'm like, you guys don't even deserve me getting out of this jacket. So the music stopped, and I'm bowing. I still half got it up, plastic bottles being thrown at me, and So that was the last set of non-talking Dr. El Suavo. It was like, so they spurred Dr. El Suavo to talk and be as hateful as he is.
Right. So you could hurl abuse back at the audience.
Like,
wow, there you go. So, now your dad, what did your dad do apart from being a magician? I mean, what was his job?
He was the manager of a chain of auto parts stores in New South Wales called Mailings.
Okay. Hence the car fetish.
Yeah, so when I was young, it was more that I was tagging along to things. Mum would push me, take him to the genies, take him to the
Go with your
genies.
dad, yeah.
Yeah, and then on the weekends it'd be taking the Castlereagh drag race or Liverpool Speedway. So that, you absorb that as a child.
Of course you do, yeah.
I still have a love of old cars and things like that. So.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You had please excuse me for that, you had a phenomenal relationship with your mother, but she passed away early. And, at the moment, my mother's been in palliative care for a couple of weeks, although I suspect she's been in palliative care for nearly a year.
Yeah.
She's got Alzheimer's in the final stages, which is really tragic. And yesterday I took the call that they've asked whether we give permission for the COVID-19 vaccine to be given to my mother.
She's got enough problems.
And she is literally weeks, maybe months away from passing on. And we want her to pass on in the calmest, easiest, gentlest way possible. I'm not sure if I want her to get COVID-19 before she goes.
She doesn't need...
And that's what I had to get up and discuss. So excuse me, but we do a fairly organic podcast at times. And Jeff,
it's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting, though, that, that they would offer a shot when there's,
You're dying. You're dying.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your mum and when she passed away. And that must be, it's an awful thing for me to bring up here, but I think it's a really influential thing in your life.
Well, it shaped you, didn't it?
She was a very pivotal part of my life. And, I think about her every day. And that, I was lucky when I moved back to Sydney from Adelaide in 1993 when I did, because the first 6 months I lived with my mum, and I would have stayed living with her. She was out at the bottom of the Blue Mountains, just near Penrith. I would have stayed there, but I was coming into the city every weekend because of gigs and working and stuff like that. So it became a bit hard. And probably about 4 months after I moved out, she was diagnosed with bowel cancer.
Right.
And so I spent a lot of time with her. And when she was in the hospital, I was probably, because my hours were a bit more flexible than my three sisters. I was the one spending most time with her and everything like that. And I dropped a lot of stuff that I was doing. Around then, I really only concentrated on managing Marker Cain for a year and Mass Appeal. Those were the only two things. And I think I did one tour to Sydney. And weirdly enough, that was Magic Dirt's first tour to Sydney.
Right.
Wow.
But Mum was very influential on me because she got me into music. She was a big fan of movie soundtracks. She liked, classical jazz. She was very eclectic with a sense of music. Dad liked country and western, but not like I like country and western, but I like bluegrass and strip-back jug. He likes the polished country and western, but he led me. And tell you what, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have seen Johnny Cash because he took me to see the Highwaymen. So kudos to that, Yeah. But also what I was lucky enough, my godfather used to service pinball machines and jukeboxes all through the 60s. So we had an A&M jukebox.
Is that Uncle Ron?
No, this was, Uncle Ron I've got to talk about because he was a mentor of mine, but this was my godfather, Ray. But he, so we had a beautiful A&M jukebox at home. The one with the turntable would go along and pick up the records, beautiful black and yellow silver fleck finish. And we had boxes of 50s and 60s 45s. Wow. So I was always popping the singles over. I was just amazed by that machine, So that was the introduction to music at a very young age. And, Donna, my closest sister, is 8 years older than me. She had a bit of a record collection in that as well, which filtered down to me. But also what was very pivotal with my mum was letting me stay up late because she wanted me to watch shows like Twilight Zone.
Oh, right.
You've got to watch the show. This is an important show to watch. And guiding me in a way of, especially with science fiction movies, with a little bit of substance to them as well. I love B grade, I love Z grade as well. But when there's a very good social conscious or, undercurrent of a science fiction movie, that just really hits me in the face. I love that sort of stuff. And she really introduced me to that. So,
which is exceptional and quite unique when you think about it, because their, genre in a sense. I mean, today we're living in a world where genre actually rules our notion of shattered cinema. But back then, genre was in science fiction. Well, in print, it was relegated to pulp paper, and it was a denigrated genre. But it was the greatest metaphor, and that's what Rod Serling did, used it as a metaphor he could hide behind the premise of science fiction. And oddly enough, Jeff, we just finished an interview with Dave Rash from the US, who's astounding. He's just releasing an astounding book of original scripts by Joseph Stefano,
Of the Outer Limits.
who was the man that adapted Psycho to the screen for Hitchcock. And you know, the Outer Limits was just as profound, even more so than Twilight Zone, in examining the human condition.
Oh yeah. Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
great.
It was brilliant. But you know, this is the interview that I swear is the God sent interview. And so maybe just give us your mother's name so we can generate some positiveness, because I've got this real building up to witnessing what's happening to my mother at the moment. I actually, believe it or not, found one series on Netflix called Surviving Death. And it is really worth watching. It is like the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross for the 21st century. The first episode is on near-death experiences, and in that they have various neuroscientists that say consciousness probably does not exist in our brain. It exists outside the body, and there looks like there's good evidence scientifically for consciousness to go on. So what was the name of your beautiful mother?
Was Barbara Gladys Halls, or Lewis was her birth name.
How
beautiful woman. But also, that sort of led on to, because of that love of film, it was sort of something I didn't quite get back to, but after the Mr. Bungle tour, I decided to bring over Richard Kern, because I was a fan of Richard Kern's films from the 80s. We all had an interesting time with that one. But, you know, doing that was like my first sort of dip and toe touring film. It'd only been bands before that. So that was 96. And then I dipped my toe in again with film with Stone in 1999 and hooking up with Sandy Harbert. And that was a great 99. 99. Memories.
Who did
like
Stone?
But but you know, I was able to reissue the soundtrack on CD, do a silver anniversary of that, and then we did a tour traveling around Australia showing Stone, and thanks to you guys putting me in touch with Richard Kuipers, we were able to take the Stone Forever doco, and Sandy did a Q&A after it, and we did every city. Well, that was a fantastic tour. I loved doing that. And of course, there's something about working with film and directors. It's a different sensation. I get something different than actually just doing a band or a musical act. I'm not saying one's better or the other. It's just for me, it's a different experience, and it's a bit more. Yeah, it's pleasurable. Usually nicer venues. You get looked after a little bit, you know.
Sure.
And you know, we got to do a fucking great show at the Mu Mesons archives, which was quite very memorable. Where what was Richard's famous quote that night? I think it was like there was no women there. That's right. It's like the Lonely Guy Club.
Yeah. I was the only woman there.
I think he was horrified that the audience was like a millimetre away from him. And I said, well, welcome, Richard, to the shit shoot of the planet. You're now on tour in Australia. But, you know, that's the generosity of you, Jeff.
He was quite surly, wasn't he, that night?
Well, when I think back on all those incredible people that we've met.
Phantom Surfers, they were an amazing band.
Lovely people. They were fantastic, those guys. And once again, I've got the records for them.
When we talk about film and music, they actually collide, don't they? Because we put the Phantom Surfers to bed in our shop in Abercrombie Street. And it was like the four of them were sleeping on the one mattress. And the one thing
all lined up.
They wanted... And they did the most exceptional gig for us in the Sounds of Seduction. They had less than 30-second sound check, and they were phenomenal musicians.
Consummate performers.
And they worked so hard. They did 3 endless sets that night.
Yeah, they did. They're amazing.
And
was it Rusty, the drummer from the Mummies? Is that correct?
Yeah. Russell,
They're amazing band.
But let me just finish that story. We popped them into bed, put the sheet over them, the doona, and then they said, what's the lullaby? What's the story we're going to read? And we go, no, we're switching on the Xenon arc.
Yeah, we're going to watch a movie.
And we're going to screen you. And I think, yet again, it was Mickey Haggerty.
Oh, God. Bloody Pit of Horror.
Bloody Pit of Horror, which was just a phenomenal moment that we will never forget.
No. See, and those moments are gold. It's just, that night, that Sounds of Seduction night, that was amazing. I loved that night. So it worked on so many levels, didn't it?
Yeah.
It was just one of those, I miss those nights so much. I'm sure you guys do as well.
Well, what I miss now is, and I was discussing with Tony Mott this a couple of years ago, Tony was saying that there were thousands of music venues, from hotels to small little clubs and bars in the late 70s.
Yeah.
Now Sydney is reduced to about 30.
It's outrageous.
And we've taken the heart out of culture. We've taken the risk out of culture.
Out of live music.
We've got no venues where young bands can actually
cut their
evolve
teeth.
And create their sound.
Yeah.
Up the road we had
Black.
Oh, hold on, we've forgotten it now. Black Wire.
Black Wire, that's right.
And that was an incredible group of young people that had turned their house into a record store and a live music venue, and they were shut down by council.
It was unlicensed,
Yeah, well, it was BYO, and it was as safe as anything.
Exactly.
But, we're living in a world where there's security, compliance, and all these things
business.
that restrict
Everybody's got their hand out to take their cut of some show.
Now, you were
an
incredible...
So much liability.
Yeah, that's what's killed it all.
You know what I love? Go on.
Sorry. No.
Go on.
Well, I was going to say the next film thing I worked on, you guys worked with me on as well, was Crispin Glover.
Oh, yeah.
And what a moment that was. And I remember Christian, who has now become an absolute star at 13 years of age. I remember Crispin, we went to...
Christian was 6 months old at the time.
And we said, here we go. And he goes, I'm never going to hold a baby.
No.
And I thought, well, it's Crispin with Christian.
Yeah.
And he doesn't realise that, his career will go down and he'll need the nuances of Christian to pick it up at some stage. So that was a silly notion on his behalf. But, the hell you went through, Crispin Glover was astounding, but the hell you went through in moving motel rooms with him.
Because I think...
Wasn't there a semen stain on the carpet?
No, it was just a stain on the carpet. Don't be like that. It was amazing.
But do you remember his young girlfriend when he was holding the look on her face? Was like, there you go, honey. If you want to stay with him, you're not going to be having a family.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
She had her answer then and there. At least there wasn't an awkward conversation they had to have
there wasn't.
The track.
Yeah, exactly.
There it is.
Yeah. I think you go beyond touring. I think what you do is people get thousands of dollars, and let's put them in US dollars, of psychological catharsis when they tour with you.
That was one of the weirdest. He's one of the weirdest people I've had to work with. Mate, no idea of a business sense or the way things work. It's just, he's privileged because his father was an actor and he was part of the Hollywood scene and that.
Yeah, exactly.
And there was that disconnection straight away. Initially he wanted to be paid before he did any show, and it's just like, no, you can't do that because you might walk away and not perform the show. And he's like, well, I can't do it then until I found a law that was written in about 1967 or 1968 into Australian law that they can only get a percentage of their fee before the performance.
Right.
So I had to send it over to him. And then it was interesting. Let's put it that way.
Well, we were able to give him some cash when he came here, which was good. You know what I mean, and appeased him a little bit.
Well, I mean, the other thing too is that was a tour that no one knew how intimate and how much time he would spend at a gig. I mean, they were gigs that were supposed to be the film and a little Q&A, and they went on to bloody the AM hours.
The Q&A went longer than the films that I showed. Yeah. It was like 2.5 hours of Q&A. It's like, shut up. That's enough.
We did 2 nights in every city because there was 2 different films. And the second night in Melbourne, I think we got out of Acme at about 2:00 in the morning.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, he was very generous with his fans.
Yeah. I totally get it, and I respect him for it, because he's sort of like, well, if people are lining up to get a photo or a signature, the person at the very end of the queue deserves it more than the person
at the beginning.
Kudos for that. He has a lot of respect that way. You know, he's a good actor and stuff like that, but just some weird views and ideas on some things.
Now, I think his father appeared in Cape Canaveral Monsters. I'll have to get a screen grab of his dad in that film, which is one of those really unique, the low Z grade, low rent productions out of the 60s, and I've got a lot of passion for. Yeah.
I wonder if that's higher on than what was it, Live or Let Die on his filmography.
Yeah.
Bruce Glover.
Yeah.
See, because that was interesting, because we got Crispin on Kerry Ann's show, the morning show. So
wow.
That I got, there's one off the bucket list. I got to meet and kiss Kerry Ann on the cheek.
Oh, really?
So
that was on your bucket list?
Yeah, well. And all she wanted to do was talk about his father.
Yeah, really?
She kept on bringing up photos of Bruce Glover. I don't know if something happened in the past between those two or what, but yeah. And we're trying to promote a tour and promote his books and
his films. Yeah, the films that he made.
Every 30 seconds or a minute later would go back to Bruce Glover, his father. It was very weird, very weird.
Yeah. You'd think she'd want to talk about his him in Back to the Future, because that's the film that he's most famous for in the mainstream.
Well, there's such so we went into Triple M up in Sydney, and we had the great comedy geniuses of Will Anderson and Limo interview Crispin Glover, and that's all they would talk about. But that's all they would talk about, Back to the Future, because that's how one-dimensional those sort of people are. But it was just, it was frustrating. It's frustrating for him. But
because
what can you do?
He was trying to, when he came out here, he was promoting his film, What Is It?, which he'd made himself. And
exactly. Wasn't about Back to the Future, wasn't about Charlie's Angels 2 or River's Edge or anything.
Well, he actually got a phone call while he was here that told him that he'd got this huge role. And I remember him saying he couldn't tell us what it was.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't even tell me. Yeah. So what happened was he was,
he got the role. Yeah, you go for it. Yeah, go.
So he did go for the role, and I'll tell you now what the role was. It was Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland.
Yes.
So he did go for the role before he came to Australia and didn't get it. But then I can't remember who the actor was that got it pulled out. And he only got that decision, as you said, on that phone call.
Yes.
So when he was actually in Adelaide doing the 2 shows, he had to fly up back to Sydney and do some satellite link up during a studio, and then flew back to do the second Adelaide show. That was getting all the ball rolling.
Right.
And we actually had to cancel Queensland, the Brisbane shows that were the last 2 shows of the tour, because he had to go back early.
Wow.
There was also, he wanted to, as soon as he got that call, he was like, I'm going to have to go back now. And I'm like,
no, you're not.
We're in the middle. No, let's try and work with this. And that's when we were able to manage it to we're going to have to cancel the Brisbane shows. And as he says, if I cancel a show, I'll always make it up. And then when he came back, he only did perfect Melbourne and Sydney. He didn't go to Brisbane.
But you know what? we adore him, and
Yeah.
and you know, you have the patience to work around, characters like that have their eccentric and indeterminate ways. And
It's interesting.
how many people in the film world, in the mainstream, with a career like him, have cut the John Cassavetes rug?
Oh, yeah.
And that is funding.
Yeah.
Really, I mean,
They're
doing
passionate
films when the entire cast had Down syndrome.
Yeah, all Down syndrome. It's an amazing film. What is it? And the beauty of it is he I don't know if he's released it now or not, but he hadn't released it, and you couldn't find it anywhere.
As far as I know, it's still not released.
I've got it.
Don't say that. We'll get shot by it.
No, I've got it. I can get it. That's not a problem.
You
but,
can get anything.
But, yeah, I can get films that haven't even been made yet.
Yeah.
But anyway.
They're only creeping.
The only one I can't get is The Day the Clown Cried. Yeah, anyway, let's not go there.
We all want that, don't we? We want that.
Yeah, we're desperate for that film. But anyway, what was I saying? I was saying about that film. No, I've lost it now.
No.
Oh, so
Speaking
what
of
he
the day
did.
clown side, there you go. There's a bit of Jerry Lewis.
Have you got Jerry Lewis there?
Because you're a big Jerry Lewis fan, aren't you?
Yeah. Anyway, he now I've lost it again. I had it. What am I talking about?
No. Cats. Crispin Glover's film.
Oh, the film. So what he would do is he actually travelled with the 35mm print of that film, and he went.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, he went into, and that's why it hasn't gotten out there prolifically. Yeah. Because he goes into the buy box with a projectionist, watches them put it on, and then as soon as he's finished, as soon as the film's finished, it starts, and he's in the bio box watching, so they don't film it from the bio box, and then he gets it straight away and puts it into the case and walks out with it. Yeah. And that's the only way he's been able to keep that film from being proliferated and bootlegged. But it's still got, I don't know how it got out there, but I am able to get a copy of what is it.
As a matter of fact, we did the Beaver trilogy.
The Beaver, the night that he did here for the archives, and I was like, okay, Jeff, this is payback time for all these people that we've put up, all these tours that you haven't had to pay for hotels, that we've tucked people into bed, canned ham, Phantom Surfers, Neil Hamburger. You're going to pay now. I want Crispin Glover to do a show in the archives. Make it happen. and you did. You made it happen. And that was the first show he did. As soon as he got off the plane, he came to the archives and he did that show. And I think we had like 80 people crammed in here. 80 people prepaid. Yep. It was an amazing show. And what we showed was the episode of Hotel that David Lynch did with him.
That's right.
And we showed the Beaver trilogy was a three-section movie it was somebody's early student film, and he played Olivia Newton-John.
That's right. In
the Beaver trilogy. And there was something else that I showed as well.
But I remember him lying on the back lounge. He goes, "That's a bootleg of me."
Well, no, he said, "Oh, how did you get a hold of those?" And I'm like, "Well, I was able to get them, And we wanted to give people something different. And he said, "Oh, I don't like that, copyright, blah blah blah." And I said, "Listen," I said, "these things nobody knows about. They're such early works of yours. They're so underground." That these people will appreciate this, and what it does, it actually lets them know, they find out about this, and when these things are released, they will go and buy them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you know what?
And sure enough, it happens every time.
You also said, and you need cash in hand.
Yeah, and I said,
so
do you want
just
cash?
Shut up and eat your salad.
I said, do you want, and I made this whole dinner for him, and he was like, "Oh no, I don't eat." All he ate was the salad because all he eats is macrobiotics.
Oh, no, we had to go to that grocery store up in Bondi every day.
So is that organic food? Is that what macrobiotics is?
Oh, overpriced organic food.
It's organic food, isn't it? Yeah, that's all he ate. And he said, the only thing I can eat from here is the tossed salad. I'm like, all right, well, You know,
Yeah.
knock yourself out on the salad, mate. We'll eat the rest. We'll eat the pasta.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There was like one of the major chains, I don't know which one, Woolworths or Coles, they bought Macro, and they just use it as a name for their health foods.
Yeah, right.
But like you'd spend $80 and come out with like a small shopping bag, and I'm like, Jesus Christ.
One meal. One meal.
Yeah, that's what it was like, because we were going there almost every day while we were in Sydney.
Of
It's
course.
like, wow. But that's what you can do when if you've got good money, you got a lot of money, you look good because you eat this expensive health food, you have personal trainers, and it's just like you look beautiful. But it was funny because I asked him on that, when he got that announcement, I'm like, so what's the movie? And he's like, can't tell you, I'm not going to jinx it.
He wouldn't tell us.
He goes, no, I don't say until it's announced in Variety.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
that was
Variety.
that was his way. That's when he says it's fine to announce that you're in a film. Once it's printed in Variety, away you go. You're a cricket.
Well, I agree with him. If he was supposed to keep his mouth shut about it, because all you have to do is tell one person, and we all go, oh, guess what? Don't tell anybody. This is a big secret. But Crispin Glover's got the Tim Burton part in Alice in Wonderland, and then it'll just spread because we can't help ourselves. So, don't tell anybody.
Now, listen, I actually stated recently that you pioneered Devo coming to this country. I'm sure I got that wrong, but I just wanted to build the accolades up. Did you have anything to do with Devo coming here?
Well, I think what happened was that they headlined Livid, I think it was 97. And I actually spoke so the promoters of Livid was Peter Walsh, who does the East Coast Blues Festival now, and another guy called Paul Campbell Ryder. And Paul was a good friend of mine. And earlier of that year, I noticed that Devo had done some Lollapalooza shows, the first shows back since, them sort of taking time out. And I was dealing with Paul because I had Zenny Gaver coming back and they were playing at Livid. And I suggested to him early in the piece, it's like, you might want to look at Devo to bring over for the festival. So maybe there was a thought there or something like that. But they did end up doing the 97 Livid. They didn't do any other shows, only Livid. And the weird thing was, so we're back, I'm with Zenny Gaver guys and crew, and we're backstage in the hospitality there having something to eat. Walk around to another section. There's all Devo and their wives and that. No Australian people that seem to want to go up and say hello or hang out with them. They're all into bands like Veruca Soul, those sort of popular indie pop bands. So they had all the hangers on. I'm like, and I was excited on the whole Zenny Gaver tour. It was like, man, I'm going to see Devo. Being Devo. I'm seeing Devo. I have a Devo tattoo. I worship Devo. Way we get up there. And it was Tabata, one of the guitarists in Zenny Gaver, who was an original founding member of the Boredoms. Right. He comes up my sleeve, like, Jeff, come. Him and Ito, the drummer, are sitting down with the Devo guys. Bang, and that was it for probably free. So we hung out with them backstage for easily an hour and a half, watched them live. Then we went back to the zoo after the festival for the after show. And once again, Devo and their wives were pretty much hanging out by themselves with Zenny Gaver and us. So we were able to spend a night with Devo, which was quite amazing. And they were very disappointed because they got there late and they actually wanted to see Zenny Gaver because they love Japanese music and Japanese culture. Mm-hmm. And they were very disappointed they didn't get to see those guys. So that's my connection with Devo. If my thought and suggestion that I gave to Paul helped get him out here, I'm very happy because everyone needs Devo in life.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And I also will always sing your praises and probably twist that history in some way. So excuse me.
You brought everybody out
but
here.
It's all for the right reasons, man.
All right, thank you.
Blowfly. What about Blowfly? The greatest historical tour ever with the most meaningful, beautiful, soul-filled man that had the dirtiest mouth I've ever heard live on a stage. Yeah. And that wasn't an easy tour for you at all.
Oh, no, but look, that once again, I got to work with someone who was a bit of a hero of mine from a teenager. Of Blowfly, my God. Yeah, well.
Do you want to tell people who Blowfly is, for those who don't know?
So Blowfly is a gentleman called Clarence Reed, who was part of the Soul Machine sound in Miami in the late 60s, early 70s. And he discovered KC and the Sunshine Band and produced and co-wrote some of their first few singles. So he also had an alter ego happening in the late 60s and doing dirty raps over songs called Blowfly. And he dressed in a costume, glittery, and around the same time as Rudy Ray Moore. A lot of people probably familiar with Rudy Ray Moore because of Dolomite and the Eddie Murphy Dolomite movie, which I thought did a really good job. So those two, so those two guys were contemporaries at the same time, doing this dirty sort of rapping style. But the thing with Blowfly was he had a funk band behind him, and a great funk band. So lo and behold, and this was through, I think it was through Jello. Jello released 2 Blowfly albums on Alternative Tentacles. There was Fahrenheit, and then
Jello
there was Punk Rock.
Did you bring him in?
Yeah, sorry, Jello released two records on AT. So the second one, I got in contact with him and said, look, I love Blowfly. Can you give me a contact? And it was Tom Boker, the manager. And he was the guy that helped bring Blowfly back to people after many years and introduce them to a complete new audience. So, I was able to bring over Blowfly. Somehow Dr. El Suavo fitted perfectly on that tour.
Funny,
and, well, that was sort of match made in heaven. And also, ironically enough, he had to share the rooms with Clarence Blowfly himself. And Clarence was quite a unique character because he left school when he was like 13 or 14 to work and support the family. So his education was a little bit stunted, and he was quite childish in many ways. But a guy that puts syrup on everything, right? So he's always got a bowl of syrup with him in his pocket or something like that. And after a show, you'd have to either get him Kentucky Fried Chicken or McDonald's. That was pretty much the 2 go-to restaurants for Clarence. So I'd be sharing with him, and he'd have like pancakes or even pizza or whatever, and he'd be pouring syrup over him after a gig while I'm there trying to do just
maple
like
syrup.
Syrup, like golden maple syrup. Would put it on in burgers. It's just, and I'd be there like trying to wind down, doing some paperwork at the end of the night or something, talking to Clarence and his long fingernails, eating this stuff, like just dripping everywhere. And I'm like, okay, I see why no one wants to share a room with you. And I'm thinking it's going to be, I want to share a room with my hero, Clarence Reed. And I got it after a couple of nights. It's like, it smells. He doesn't shower. There's towels everywhere with hair dye. There's empty syrup bottles and polystyrene takeaway containers. It's like, I get it.
So was it true that he didn't like swearing, like around him off stage? Was that him or was it somebody else?
No. You're thinking of our classic, the guy that did he was the crossover between country and rockabilly.
Oh, right, okay.
Who came
Somebody
out.
else.
But the interesting thing about Clarence is that he was still living with Mum.
Oh, yes.
And he also was a real heartfelt Christian.
Yeah.
So he would come off stage after saying the most amount of profanities, blasphemy, anything
Potty
you can
mouth.
imagine. And then you walk backstage and you'd say, well, bless you, Clarence, and he'd go into a whole eulogy of some sort of Christian faith. He was an absolute dichotomy of an individual, but beautiful soul. And Jeff, the more I think about this, that is an incredibly complex, colourful, extraordinary history you have. And we must mention, Julie, your partner too, in the 90s there, that the two of you were a powerhouse that were on fire in terms of bringing exceptional acts to this country. There is a book in there.
Yeah.
There is a book on your life. There is a screenplay. There is a mini-series.
You'll have to send us a list of all the people that you toured, and we'll just put it on there so they can look through. Because I think,
apparently,
in its totality,
if you're gonna make the movie, you got to get Billy Bob Thornton to play me. Everyone says nowadays, as I've gotten older, I'm a splitting image for Billy Bob Thornton for some reason.
I can see that.
But I don't know.
Without Angelina.
But yeah, Clarence, it was quite sad because I did a couple of shows with them in America as well. I did, where was it? The Bottle Tree in Alabama, and then we did a show in Miami at Churchill's, an English style pub in Little Haiti in Miami. And when I finished, the sound guy gives me a Cooper's Red as I walk off stage, and I'm like, this is too weird, because Miami is a weird town. I'll tell you, it's a very strange town. So the sad thing about Clarence and living with his family was that he wasn't very good with his bookwork. So most of the money he was making was going in taxes. So that's why the main reason he was still living at home. Wow. And also he had to sell off all his records over the years and things like that as well. And I've encountered that with other people, which is like Captain Sensible from The Damned, my all-time favourite band. I got the tour of The Damned in 1997. And Captain came out a little bit early and stayed with me. And I'm going through all my Damned records, and I'm like, is there anything up there you might have? I'm just curious, have a look. And he's like, probably all of them, because I actually had to sell off all my record collection, sign all my records, sell them off in about 1991 to stave off bankruptcy. Wow. And this was after he had #1 hits in England and being a big pop star there. But as you said, what happened? Well, he's a very innocent guy, Captain, and he admitted it. They party, and his entourage and all the hangers-on party paid for it.
And he paid
Captain
for it.
Sensible, And
Captain Not So Sensible.
No, it actually got him. And, to me, it almost brought a tear to my eyes. I almost wanted to take out all my Damn singles and go, here, you're on these records. You should have these in your life. You wrote these songs.
Yeah.
And, and Clarence went down a similar road. And I know it's not they're not the only two people. I've heard a lot of those stories because a lot of performers, and I was talking to someone about this last night, aren't good with business. It's very rare that you get both of them that can combine. And nowadays, I wouldn't class myself as a touring business anymore. I've moved more into being Dr. El Suavo. I can still book tours and that.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to find the two sort of together. Mm-hmm. And these gentle souls, and Clarence was a gentle soul. Captain Sensible's a gentle soul, are very easy to be taken advantage of. Yeah. And it's sad when they're your heroes. It's very sad to see.
Because they want to party with you while you're up there, and you can pay for them, but then once it's all over, they don't care about you.
And to me, that's a really strong, important statement, because so much of our artistic world is now just a commodity that's driven by business with no true passionate edge that really doesn't touch the human soul and elevate the spirit. And I think one of the things you did, I would say that Julie might have been a little bit more business-minded. This is just me as an outsider looking on. And you're extremely passionate, and I think in many ways that you probably could have been a bit more cutthroat as well and got further along the line if it wasn't for your heart being involved in everyone you toured. And it's easy as an outsider to look on and go, oh, these people are successful, or this guy's doing his dream. No one knows how difficult it is to do what you did and achieve the results you did. If you actually went through your entire history of the people you brought to this country, you probably have sustained more long-lasting relationships with those musicians and artists than most promoters ever do, because it's just a business venture for them.
Yeah. Well, see, a good example of that is The Damned. Still my all-time favourite band. Got to tour them in 1997 when Dave and Captain got back together. Then when they toured again, I didn't do, it was when I'd stopped touring bands, I was more into doing Greg and the smaller things. They asked me to open on the Australian tour out here, so I opened the 3 shows as Dr. El Suavo. And each, the two times they've been back, or one time they're back, it's like seeing family, seeing Captain and Dave and Monty again. Then that's something, wow, you know, I cherish that. I feel privileged to think that, okay, a band that's been so influential all my life, I can get on onto the computer and talk to Captain pretty much any time. I love those guys so much, yeah. So, yeah, it was always that. It was always that underneath, and that's why I didn't tour bands like Green Day and other things that I was offered that would have been, okay, you know, probably put a mortgage on a house with this tour. It just, and also that, and I'd had things happen to me before with a couple of things where people had gone behind me to try and sneak tours away. I didn't want to get in fights with other promoters doing that. Just let me do my own thing. You know, that's it. I don't want to get in bidding wars or any, blocking out venues that I want to use because I'm touring bands of a similar ilk and all that sort of thing. That was a different world to me. You know, I still feel it's very organic. It's very DIY. And that's how I like to live my life still now. You know, so, you know.
You haven't, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting there, but, this thought just hit me, and which is one of the trains of thought we're doing on the Naked World podcast. You haven't come from that art school environment or the economic environment where you've got, and that's what's so exciting to us, is to find people that actually do operate off their heart. Because passion. We think so many people out there have extraordinary creative potential, but they're intimidated. They're mystified by that system. Don't feel they're good enough to actually do what
that they can't do it. But you can do it. If you're passionate enough, you can do anything.
Yeah, well, see, that was a good thing about the amazing thing about the Sydney punk scene in the early days was that I was disenchanted out in the western suburbs. I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in at school. You know, there was only a handful of us that really hung out. I did art. I'm not a painter. I can't paint to save my life, but I wanted to learn about art history. And I made a couple of dumb Super 8 films with my dad to get through art. But as soon as I got year 10, when kids could still get a school certificate, which you can't get anymore, I was like, bang, I moved straight into the inner city. You know?
So what did you want to do when you were young? What did you, when you were a kid, how they ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What was your answer?
I wanted to be an astronaut.
An astronaut.
Still do. My dream is to see Earth from space. That is my all-time dream. And go back to my home planet. Okay,
your home planet.
I think that's really important. You've always had a love for the world of the anomalous, which is where we get along. But the other thing you've always had a love for is the whole notion of vaudeville, the Las Vegas Rat Pack times, and in a way,
Jerry Lewis.
I think where we correspond is we're actually really, if I can say this, and I'll say this about myself, we are bad vaudeville.
Yeah.
We are really atrocious vaudeville, and we won't stop, and no one's going to stop us. And all those people that go, you shouldn't do that, just egg us on even more to be bad vaudeville. Yeah,
no, they can go. They can go see David Campbell and all those other great Australian performers, Tina Arena and that. If they want, they can go see them at the casino shows. Let us do our thing. We're real vaudeville. It's like Reno compared to Las Vegas, right? Las Vegas sucks nowadays. Why would you want to go to Vegas? No, go to Reno. Go to Reno. It's like Vegas of the 70s. You'll have a much better time. Believe me, go to Reno.
And all those artists at that time were so happy, Don Rickles and everyone, because they were working alongside of organised crime.
The mob.
And it made it easier for them. When it got organised and the other crime is like official crime.
Yeah.
But organised crime was if you did your act and you could turn up at the sister's wedding at the drop of a hat, then you were okay.
You were fine. They looked after you.
Yeah. Yeah, how exciting was that sort of stuff? You can imagine being, I think it was, is it the Chez Fade bar? It's down at Santa Monica Pier where we went down there, Greg and me went down there, and it's where the Rat Pack used to drink a lot down there. I always used to think, we're there at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're winding down, having some drinks out in the back room, and Don Rickles rolls up at 2 in the morning.
That man is a god to me. Don Rickles is one of my favourite comedians.
Sorry?
Don Rickles is my favourite comedian. I just love Don Rickles. He kills
Amazing.
me.
You know, the beautiful thing is our relationship over the years, we've been able to co-inspire each other with our love for all that culture in a way, you know, Ernie Kovacs, all that stuff that has been pushed aside by contemporary art that is not coming from the same place whatsoever. It is not organic. It is not passionate.
It's not innovative.
Now, maybe just, you know, tell us a little bit about the bands you've been in. You've been in some frighteningly profound bands. And tell us a little bit about one of the world's most unique parlour magicians that won't be admitted to the Magic Castle any day soon.
Oh, we spoke about Dr. El
Oh,
Suavo.
you did speak about it. Okay, all right.
Before he was speaking,
Well, I
and
wasn't
then when
here.
he was
That was with
speaking.
my brother.
Yeah.
So maybe tell us about your musical career.
Well, it's not a great career. We did a little band called Kimber back in the 80s, and then I was going to sing for one of the bands I managed, Death Mission. That was it. But I got a couple of times, Hard-Ons would get me up. I'd sing a song with them. Got a couple of times with Mass Appeal. But since in the last decade, what I've been doing is actually some recordings with Chris Cashel, who I mentioned before, who was also known as Toad back in the day. I think it's Waste Sausage he's on, or Leather Donut,
yes.
one of the old Black Light. So he works under the name Raw Sex now, and we have a guy called Dave Williams, who was the drummer in Perdition, an old Adelaide punk band, and another band called Hack with Harry Butler and Michael Farkas from Grong Grong. So those two guys and me, we've started a little thing called Dr. El Suavo and the Freaks of Nature, and we recorded an album and an EP. So that's sort of where my musical career is. Not a great deal, but I'm enjoying what we've done. The album we've done is quite fun. I thought I sent you up a copy, but I'll make sure
You did. I've got a copy. And can people go online to find that? Have you got a link we can put up on the podcast to be able to purchase that?
You come to the Facebook. You go to Dr. El Suavo page on Facebook. We can get you an album out that way. It's on there. You can sort it out. But an interesting thing that you mentioned before about the entertainers of today, and it was something I just wanted to mention quickly, was so if you open up your news app on your phone and you scroll through the stories, news of today, you know, US politics, you know, Trump's always up the top for me. We get down and you go to entertainment, right? And they might be 6 entertainment stories. They're not entertainment stories, right? We're looking at someone from Married at First Sight was seen on a beach in a bikini kissing someone. They are not entertaining.
No.
Right?
They're just promoting TV shows.
That's right. And with reality TV, what it's done, it's brought people that aren't entertainers think out the left side of their mind. Normal people, pig people, well, I shouldn't say that, think out the right side of their mind. And what these reality shows are bringing in are the people to think from the right side of the mind, trying to be thinking out of the left side of the mind, trying to be entertained. All right. That started with Big Brother, and then when they take the contestants from Big Brother to nightclubs to be DJs and hosts and things like that, that started
celebrities. Yeah.
Exactly. To me, that started to drop the celebrity icon down to the gutter straight away, and it hasn't really come back up because it's been relentless with these shows like Married at First Sight, The Bachelor or Bachelorette, whatever like that. You know, like maybe 1 in 100 of those people do have those skills to go on and are truly entertainers, but they're being pushed into positions, and you see how many people break down out of that and how many problems there are with producers and the trouble that goes on. And the work of those producers to make people look like they're being stressed out or angry or anything like that is ungodly what they do to these contestants.
Yeah.
Like I got asked, I think it was the first or the second season, I knew one of the producers that were working on Australia's Got Talent, okay? And they said, you don't even have to audition. If you want to do Dr. El Suavo on the show, you're on. I rang Greg for his advice. He'd actually been asked to go on the one in America and knocked it back. And he explained why. And I totally agree. Well, a little bit said, just going to use you. There's no way you're going to win, so forget about it. Yep. So, but they're going to build you up, keep building you up to use these little snippets on their TV ads so it looks a little bit wacky.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a wacky show. Still, a singer's going to win at the end of it.
Yeah.
You know, It might as well just be, Australian Idol or American Idol.
You just feel
a
it.
singer. Yeah, exactly. And, it's like, well, I don't want to be treated like that.
No.
The last season, there was a magician friend of mine on there, and he got treated like shit towards the end. Like, they do a thing where they'd hold a camera in the green room, and you're supposed to go, like, okay, you could have a set time to go on. And then they keep pushing it back, and they keep the camera going in the green room to see you stress.
Yeah,
see you stress, or anxiety. And
there's nothing reality about it. It's all contrived.
Yeah, it was always set up that way. It's not like, oh, we've had a problem, we've had a boom go or something, we've got to fix this. Sorry, you're going to go on 20 minutes later. They deliberately give you a time earlier so you can build up the anxiety levels and stress levels. And that gets caught on camera. And it's like, no, give me reruns of Super Chicken, give me reruns of the Munsters, give me anything before that.
Yeah. But give me a celebrity roast.
Yeah.
You know what?
And not the new ones.
No, not the new ones.
No, they are despicable.
Oh, they're horrible.
But give me those 70s celebrity roast at the Friars Club, and what you will see is that comedians, entertainers were able to improvise off their cuff, even though a lot of it was scripted at times.
Yeah, but hang on. I've seen the new celebrity roasts now, is they bring on not even comedians. They just bring on, a sports person or an actor, and they write the jokes for them, and then they put them on. I think there was Dr. Ruth on one of them, or some psychiatrist. It's like, what the hell is this?
Like some material for those roasts. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And can you see there's no connection amongst the people?
No.
Whereas back in the 70s ones with the Dean Martin, everyone loved, there was genuine fucking love on that.
Yeah, they were all friends. They were all friends.
Yeah.
They're psychologically engineered, scripted and crafted, as you were stating before, for cruelty.
Yeah.
They want to see people mentally unravel.
Yeah.
The amount of psychological destruction through those shows is not just on the people that are on camera, which they are so cruel to, but it's also to the audience. It's turning the audience into this receptively addicted. Because I'm not willing to actually look introspectively at my own troubles and try and do something positive about that, I will watch on like a voyeur in a car crash
and feel better about myself.
And that is the most. It's like the last 30 seconds in the Woolworths and Coles aisle, where you're going to pick up something you shouldn't be picking up that's not healthy to you, but it's been shoved in your face, and the only way to get out of the supermarket is to ingest this crap. And so I see the destruction. As a matter of fact, Jeff, there is an incredible feature-length documentary that was put out by North Korea that stated about the destruction of Western culture, and the pinnacle of it all was reality TV.
Yeah, the Married at First Sight.
The cruelty of reality TV.
Yeah.
I'll get you a copy of that.
We're not the only ones. I'd love to see that. Can you send me?
I will send you that. We've been bootlegging material out of North Korea for a while now, but I will certainly send you that. And I hope you've seen... Tracy Torme, who's on his deathbed, the son of Mel Torme, and James Fox's latest documentary, The Phenomenon, because it is the greatest documentary made on the UFO conundrum you'll ever come across. And due to the pandemic, you've got a copy.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And I knew you would, because you've been someone that's always been open-minded. It's not a matter of like, tilting at windmills or putting on the... You've always been extremely open-minded. Open-minded in your approach to entertainment, open-minded in your approach to music, open-minded in your approach to reality. And I think in many ways you're very misinterpreted in the Australian scene at times, because you've had to be forceful, like my wife, and people misinterpret that. And I just want people to realise through this podcast, to whatever audience we can, and we will be getting them out there, just not on the Patreon line in the future, that people need to be aware of you, and someone needs to come to you with a book offer or a film offer. There's an incredible documentary in there. And next time we actually shoot you on the podcast, for Christ's sake, put up some of your ephemera behind you, man. I mean, you are
He's
one
in
of
a
the...
hotel room.
Oh, is he?
He's
But
not at home.
He's one of the most colourful persons, one of the most astounding collections in the world.
I had a beautiful setup. I had a beautiful setup for last week, but, you know, my technology, because I'm such a old man and believe in antiques and everything, my laptop can't even have bloody Zoom. So that was interesting. But also another thing I think we connect on, and goes back a bit to this reality TV, we've all worked in welfare in our own ways as well. And that's, I think that we connect on that level of compassion and that as well. And that's why we are so disgusted by reality TV and the way that's going and what it does to people, because we've helped out people that don't ask for help, but who need it. So I think that's a very strong thing for us as well. Yeah. You know, as for being open-minded and conspiracy theories and all that, our conspiracy theories, the old school conspiracy theories, but COVID is real. Wear a mask, replicas.
You know what they've done there is a major psyop where they've slammed the right into the left, and they've thrown a turd into the punch bowl of parapolitical and investigative journalism. Yeah. We're not here to wear a tinfoil hat, but we know there's so much more to this reality. There's so much skullduggery out there that will never stop. Yeah. And what you've done, I mean, you are one person that I can think back on and pluck 1,000 extraordinary memories that always bring a smile and a tenderness to my heart. I mean, let's think about backstage when the Mu Mesons were asked by you so generously to support Faxed Head, and we had a collision of false reality and real reality come together. You know,
that was hilarious.
The mentally ill in my band were questioning the actual, you know, trouble that the Faxed Head were having. People were being strangled, and yet we still all went on and did a reasonable show.
That was amazing, that show. That was at Lay Girls, right? You guys played for so long. I think I watched about 20 minutes. I'm like, I've got to get a coffee because I was tired. Went down, had a coffee and a piece of cake. Came back and saw another 20 minutes or half hour.
Yeah, and then I think we did a massive encore. I mean, we are so insecure. Once we're given a microphone and stage, we're never getting off.
You're not getting off. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You know, there's no way we can end an interview with you, and we want to spend the rest of the day online with you, but we can't. But it has been so generous of you this morning to be on the Naked World podcast with us.
It's been my pleasure. We're family, and unfortunately, over the last year or so, we haven't been in contact as much as we used to be. But you're always still dear to my heart.
Oh, okay.
And
thank God.
Someone's
brought some colour into the backdrop.
Beautiful. We do have one. That's my new musical protege who's going to be coming up to Sydney in a few months with me. So keep an eye out. There's going to be a little tour that's happening.
Who is it? It's
Franklin's Mint, which is Phil Franklin from Secret Chiefs and Faxed Head.
Right.
Wow.
Dr El Suavo, Vegas All Stars, which is Dr El Suavo and young Daniel Ticheri. And, of course, Jay Tax. You guys will be on the show as well. So we're looking at doing that. And I think Danny Heifetz from Mr. Bungle, he's going to be playing with Phil as well. So you're going to have a little duo there of Mr. Bungle and Secret Chiefs and Faxed Head. And Phil's album's very good and his artwork is fantastic. We're going to do a little art show as well as part of the gig. So we'll keep you in the loop on that one. Yeah,
awesome.
It'd be good to get back into shows again. It's been 2 years.
Oh, it's been 2 years.
We've got a few surprises that may come up within the next 12 months in terms of making venues a little easier to access. And we can't say anything yet, but we've got exciting news.
We're doing a Crispin Glover on you now.
Yeah, we are doing a Crispin Glover. Yeah. You don't need your fingers crossed.
New venue opening up for people like us. Stay tuned.
You don't have the venues can stay open until whenever now, can't they?
Yeah, but no, there's a new venue opening up for people like us.
Yeah, by very close comrades of ours.
Us.
And so that's exciting news. Listen, there's still restrictions. People cannot dance. I think it's 30 people can dance. Then you have to tap someone like the old school, excuse me, I want to cut in.
It's almost like, tag teaming them.
Yeah.
Wrestling.
But got rid of that sort of licensing thing. The venues can stay open later and that now.
Yeah.
Well, that's the most astounding thing is
but they
those
don't.
corrupt laws that strangled venues for years that were like embedded since the corruption of Robert Askin.
Yeah.
All of a sudden were dropped overnight from COVID. And, you know, the Annandale Hotel sits vacant
Oh, it's
down the
empty.
block from us.
Yeah.
And you did so
It's
many great
closed.
shows there. I remember that shocking show, the GGL, and that
Oh,
when you weren't part
no,
of
that
that.
was-
There was
that was
Stumpy.
Andrew.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
Where
Yeah.
Matt and
So
Dan-
there was the Annandale's closed, is it?
Yep.
Yeah.
It closed when COVID started, and it hasn't opened up. They're not. It's not a growing concern
And, you know, it
now.
was closed down when Matt and Dan were running it through the complaints of two people.
Yeah.
Now, that
No
piece
sense,
of
yeah.
legislation is removed. That piece of law is
now,
gone.
now that all the pubs are gone.
Yeah,
You know, that
so-
have shut down
And those-
anyway.
It's too little too late. They've devastated
Yeah.
this city. But you know what?
Yeah.
But you know what's bizarre too now, Jeff? Like when I go
What's
to
that?
pick up Cats on a Thursday night at
Yeah.
Cottonmouth, where he's DJing, I usually turn up there just after 11. When I drop
Yeah.
him off, Enmore is like a throng of people everywhere, right?
Yeah.
You know, so many people walking along and going into venues and stuff like that. People out on the street eating and drinking and stuff. And then when I get there after 11 o'clock, it's dead. It's a ghost town.
11
Ghost town.
o'clock.
Everybody's on a Thursday night. It's like, what? What, you all got to get up and go to work tomorrow? I don't think so.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Didn't he?
but they don't. But they don't.
Yeah.
And even if they did, you know what I mean? We used to go to bed late and get up in the morning and go to work. Young people, it's like, you
Yeah,
don't need
yeah,
sleep
yeah.
when you're young.
Twice about-
You can sleep
Yeah,
when you're
yeah.
dead. You know,
You know,
there's plenty of time to sleep.
that whole bullshit of like seeing crowds backed around a corner for a burger by Josh.
Oh my God, don't go
You know,
there.
I mean, what in the hell is that crap?
The
you
good
know?
thing was that,
that-
you know, the Enmore opened up, which is it was closed for a year, and it opened up, you know, a couple of weeks ago. So that's
things
a
are
good
getting
thing.
back to normal.
Yeah.
But, you know, the motivation for people to go to gigs is just like we need to retrain those audiences.
Yeah.
We need them to realise that, you know, back in our day, and it's not nostalgia, is that gigs were exciting.
Yeah.
They were astounding. Anything could happen.
Yeah, nothing
you know?
can happen now.
Yeah.
Too much security.
So
that's the
see, that-
problem.
you know, like shows down here, they're doing pre-sale tickets, and because it's a thing now where it's not like there's good shows on every weekend.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably 2 or 3 a month. These shows are like selling out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything.
And because they,
and
you
it's
know, the
like
capacity
doing-
is not 100%. It's like at 70%.
No, we're at 70, 75% down
Yeah.
here, I think. But it's, you know, people want to go out and they're prepared to do it. You know, like
Yeah.
I did a show with Daniel when you know, just after lockdown here, not long after lockdown. And you know, the thing that you can do, you can bump up the ticket price. You do seated down shows and limited capacity. It's small steps, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to being able to tour again.
Yeah.
Get
And
out.
you know
get
what?
out-
It's
out-
not exploiting people buffeting up that
Behaviours.
ticket price. It's actually trying to pay for the friggin' tour.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
if your seats are limited. And you know the amazing
Yeah.
thing is they've conditioned people now. They just want to stay at home in front of that friggin' computer. They're masturbating in front of the computer. They're ordering Deliveroo.
Yeah.
It's such a boring friggin' world. Get out and experience reality. I get really frustrated when people on my timeline go, well, those days of me going out to a gig are over.
Why?
And I go, well, those days of you experiencing incredible, innovative live music are over, are they? Well, why don't you go to Rookwood? Move to Rookwood. It's got a frigging postcode, and your rent will be bloody cheap after you buy a plot to die in. Just put a phone in there, man.
Yeah, no, it's nice, Rookwood. That's where my mum lays with the grandparents. I like it out there. I'll probably be buried there as well. So
Yeah,
come
yeah.
and join us out at Rookwood.
Yeah, we'll both
Party
put
time.
phones in our bit of earth, and we'll make sure that they're on 24/7. But I won't
We're
be
gonna
ordering Deliveroo, I'll tell you that much.
All right, that's enough.
We're gonna have a
Yeah,
tomb.
Yeah, we will have a crypt, baby. Believe me.
Crypt of the living dead.
You know what I was thinking of doing? I was thinking of going onto the Royal Caribbean, getting outside the 5 mil limit and go, Miss Death, just push me over.
Yeah.
It's going to be the cheapest funeral of the lot.
No funeral, lost at sea, done. Have a memorial service finished.
And then float back as a piece of shit onto a board down on Bondi and scare the shit out of those fuckers. Anyway, we love you so much. Jeffrey Halls, you've been part of the naked world. You have pinched the heart of our psychic disorder. We love you deeply.
Thank you, and love to you both, and love to everyone that's watching this. Support the Mu Mesons, please.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon up in Sydney with a new show.
There's a semen-stained piece of carpet waiting for you to sleep on.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to Anton curling up to me.
Oh, yeah. All right, love.
Have a nice
one. Guys.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
You're listening to the Naked World Podcast with J Cats and Miss Death. Please find us at mumesonarchives.com. Don't forget to subscribe.